Oh, hey there. Are you looking for a gaming laptop? The GTX 970 is a pretty popular video card. In fact, it's the #1 most popular card on the Steam hardware survey. I've got one in my system at home, and most of the guys here have one as well. So it's only natural that the manufacturers try to stuff that kind of power into their gaming notebooks, you know, for science. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the MSI GS series of gaming notebooks. And why the GS? Well, they're basically one of the fastest and thinnest gaming notebooks you can get on the market. Sure, the GT series is a bit faster, but it's humongous. Something like the Razer Blade is thinner, but it's nowhere near as fast. And that's where the GS series come in. They offer a good balance of performance with zero throttling while still being very portable. Let's start with a physical tour. The two models we have here are the GS40 Phantom and the GS60 Ghost Pro. They have essentially the same hardware on the inside, but their main difference are the screen size and keyboards. The GS40 has a 14-inch screen and weighs just 3.7 pounds, while the GS60 has a 15.6-inch screen, an RGB keyboard with the number pad, and weighs 4.2 pounds, but it is thinner than 20 millimeters. One interesting thing about the GS60 is the cloth covering on the bottom of the laptop. It's super soft and almost like suede, and its purpose? It's actually to prevent the laptop from slipping off your lap. I kid you not, it really helps, and I actually really like it. But it's not gonna work some magic and stick to you, but it's gonna help by adding a little bit of resistance. And like most MSI gaming laptops, they feature SteelSeries keyboards. And the GS60 comes with an RGB keyboard with the typical RGB effects like wave, audio, breathing, and of course custom zone settings. No big complaints on the layout of the keyboard. All keys were normally spaced out, and it has full-size shift, enter, and everything was in the right place. The only complaint I have is that the arrow keys on the GS40 were very tiny and squished together. But let's face it, if you're going to be gaming and using your keys, you'll want to use a mechanical keyboard anyways. GT80 Titan. Next, both laptops also feature an ESS Sabre digital audio converter and amplifier. So for you audiophiles out there, you're getting a signal-to-noise ratio of 127 decibels and a total harmonic distortion of -120 decibel. In layman's terms, those numbers are actually better than high-end dedicated sound cards that you can get for PCs. They can even support headphones with an impedance up to 600 ohms, which we're pretty willing to believe. Anthony tried 250 ohm Bayer dynamics with it and couldn't go past 50% volume before it got too loud to bear. We know volume isn't everything, but that's a discussion for another video. You get two USB 3.0 ports, so if you're using this for video editing or like to charge things through the laptop, you'll definitely need a USB hub. They also both feature one USB 3.1 Type-C, full-size SD card slot, Ethernet port, HDMI 1.4 port, and a mini display port. Now let's jump inside. They've both got the latest 6th generation Intel i7-6700HQ processor, 16 gigs of DDR4 memory, an NVMe PCIe SSD, killer NIC networking, and a GTX 970M for graphics. For the display, they're both IPS 1080p panels with anti-glare matte coatings. The Surface does do a good job of reducing reflections while still providing a very sharp image. We measured the GS40 with the Spider 4 Elite calibrator and got a 99% accurate sRGB color rating. The GS60 even comes with an available 4K display, which is pretty impressive from a technological standpoint. It's pretty good for something like video editing, but for the most part, a bit unnecessary for such a small screen size. After all, with a pixel density of over 282 pixels per inch, stuff is gonna be tiny, like tiny. If you're worried about sharpness, just keep in mind that most 24-inch monitors are also 1080p, so you're already getting much better pixel density. Plus, you won't really be able to play games well at 4K with mobile graphics anyways. Now, we've already tested the Skylake processors in these laptops in a previous video, which you can watch over here, but we didn't test the graphics cards, so naturally we ran Firestrike on them a few times to get some numbers. Even after 30 minutes of repeated benching, we only hit a maximum of 67 degrees Celsius and stayed at a GPU-boosted 1038 megahertz. Absolutely zero throttling. Oh, and we got an average score of 6,556. We were curious about the heat, so we took some shots with our thermal camera. It's interesting to see how MSI doesn't use the wrist rest area as passive heat sinks, unlike some notebooks out there. You can clearly see the two main heat exhausts out the back and one on the side, which is kind of neat. Now, we tested these as our workstations for CES 2016, and they were absolutely rock solid. They booted up fast, never crashed, and rendered our 4K videos on NCIX TV in just under an hour. There were, however, a few drawbacks. On the GS40, the power plug is sandwiched in between the network port and the USB plug. So if you got both of them plugged in, the 90-degree power cable just kind of awkwardly sits on top of it. And on the GS60, the Ethernet port is on the right side. So if you have a small desk and you want to use a mouse, it gets in the way. Anthony and I both disliked the trackpads as well. It's slick, it registers your commands very accurately, but we liked having the dedicated mouse buttons. When it's built into the trackpad, you can often shift your cursor while clicking. My gaming laptop at home has a physical mouse button on the trackpad, so I got used to resting my finger on it as well while clicking, and you can't do that with this kind of trackpad since it's not sure whether you want to do a multi-finger gesture or something else, so keep that in mind. Something else to keep in mind is I noticed there's a lot of mouse acceleration, which I could not find where to turn off. It wasn't in any of the settings. So if you do find it, let me know, because that's really, I hate mouse acceleration, but it doesn't bug Anthony on his, so it's a personal preference. And none of those are real deal breakers. It's just something to keep in mind. Other than that, the GS series is an excellent model for people who want that combination of performance and size, at least until external GPUs become more popular. Personally, I loved it. It was great for photo and video editing without being a huge brick that you had to lug around while you travel with. And it's got pretty small power adapter, so that's a definite plus. Alright, that wraps up our overview of the GS series laptops. Thanks for watching, and click over here for more of our videos, or click over here for Twitter. Be sure to like and subscribe for more videos like this from NCIX.